Alright, today I'm going to be talking about the basics of building your character in 1.4. There will be an advanced tactics video coming up soon where I talk about more, in-depth ideas on how to theory craft. But right now, a lot of people have asked me kind of the basics for getting a build or a spec up and running in a positive way that will allow you to not only survive but compete, especially in the Dark Zone, and progress through PvE content. To start off with, I'm going to talk about weapons. So the first thing when looking at weapons is you have to note that the god roll, quote unquote, there's big air quotes around that, has changed, okay? And it's always been kind of subjective. Some people agreed or disagreed on what was the best 3 talents to roll on a gun. But the common conception was that brutal, deadly, responsive was the god roll. It was the best thing to run. Well, now my opinion is that that's changed. I now look for responsive, unforgiving, and competent. 3% weapon damage bonuses that stack on top of each other, and especially when paired with booster shot, create something that's really competitive in burst damage situations. So that's very important to look out for. Outside of those 3 talents, if you're looking for any alternatives, vicious, deadly, brutal, and fierce as well are 3 more or 4 more fantastic talents that you can put on a gun in certain combinations to create really, really lethal compositions. I like all those talents. I'll stand by them as top tier. I don't know if any combination of those would mathematically be the best in the game. However, those are what I'm going to probably be using from here on out, especially with any sort of automatic weapon. And they're what I would advise anyone who just wants a basic concept of what's good in the game and what to go for to look into those and maybe start experimenting with them. The next thing we're going to talk about is armor. A lot of people have been asking me, how do I get my toughness higher? How do I max out my armor? And there's a few ways that you're going to do that. So the first thing to note is that the mitigation cap has changed from 75% to 70%, and now it's very difficult to achieve 70%. It's not going to be something that you just flat out max right away, that everybody checks off on the list and then moves on. It's actually going to be something that's much more difficult to achieve, and I've found that about 55% is the sweet spot. Now the way to achieve that, and that again is my version of the sweet spot for PvP, it has enough mitigation to survive and be fairly tanky and survivable. But it's not something that's going to make you a super tank by any means. My way to achieve that is I roll armor on my chest piece. As you can see here, I have 1200 extra. I've rolled armor here on my backpack as another major attribute. As you can see, I have 900 extra. I've rolled it on my holster. I have over 600 extra here. And then I've rolled it on my knee pads, and I have almost 1100 here on the knee pads. That allows me to achieve a high amount of armor, but that would only get me to about 50%, which is usable, and I would advise everyone going into the Dark Zone to have at least 50% weapon mitigation through their armor. But the way I've gotten that extra 5, almost 6%, is to go in and have all of my mods have armor. As you can see, firearms with armor, double mod there, those are good ones. This is a fairly good one with 200 armor, another firearms mod. As you can see here, I have a stamina mod with 200 armor, and then as you can see here, another firearms mod with 153 armor. This is one I need to phase out. I can get an easy extra 100 armor, which would put me up over 56% mitigation, but it's important to use gear mods with armor if you're going to start to check off that weapon mitigation higher percentage, which will allow you to survive against things like shotguns or sniper rifles in a more meaningful way. So now that we've covered armor, there's one last thing to touch on, and that's the high-end pieces. So as most people already know, but for anyone that doesn't, high-end gear pieces have been changed, so they are now the same gear score as all of the gear set pieces, 229. And it's very important to incorporate a few of these into your build. 6-piece gear set builds will, except in certain circumstances, very specific circumstances, will not be as good as builds that incorporate high ends. These talents are very valuable. So unless you're running something that relies on 3 pieces and 3 pieces, it's typically going to be better to incorporate 2 or more high ends. Now, right here you can see Vigorous. I would strongly advise everyone to use Vigorous over Reckless. Overheal to all healing skills allows for a very specific incorporation of Booster Shot, which will still overheal you and is extremely valuable. Not only is Booster Shot now more valuable than it ever previously was with the mitigation, it's actually more valuable because of the amounts. Self-heal is 49,000, ally heal is 51,000, but as you can see, if I were to go over to overdose, if you're running in a squad, self-heal is 83,000, which may seem all well and good, and from a solo play perspective, that can be very valuable. Ally heal is actually only 42,000, so you're not healing your teammates for as much, and then kind of the reverse of that is Defibrillator, with 41,000 self-heal and 85,000 ally heal. It's really important to be running something that has a balanced portion of healing, and not only that, it increases damage and damage resistance for the affected targets for kind of a long duration. Situationally, it's probably the best thing you can possibly use in a team fight. It has a larger radius on the ground to heal people. It's really, really valuable. Another hidden tidbit is that while using Vigorous, you can be overhealed by your ally's support station. As you can see here, I dropped the support station and 2 of my allies are going to get an overheal from that. The third one is not, because he doesn't have Vigorous on. So if you have a dedicated healer class in your squad, you should be running Vigorous. I think it's the best in slot for chess pieces, hands down. But again, this is all personal opinion. A lot of people have asked me for it though, so please don't hate in the comments and say, oh, well, it's just opinion, you don't know what you're talking about. This is exactly what it's advertised as, what I think to be the best mechanics in the game. Moving on to the gloves, you have Savage. That is still best in slot for gloves, I believe. It's very, very good to incorporate. The critical hit chance, since most of the mechanisms to achieve critical hit chance cap of 60% have been kind of nerfed or removed or adjusted, this is still a very valuable percentage, even though it's a little bit lower now at 7%. And then the backpacks have some interesting ones. Right now, Inventive is not functioning as intended. Once you've gone below max health, if you go back to max health or full health, the 15% doesn't actually kick in sometimes, which is really inconvenient and makes it not as good to run as Specialized. This is a really nice one. This is kind of the sleeper backpack talent in my eyes, because if you're running a hybrid firearm stamina build, you can achieve an easy extra 20,000 skill power just from this talent on your backpack. So running 2 high ends with a 4-piece of a gear set, or even a 2 and a 2, is going to be really valuable, except in very specific circumstances where you're going to run 3 and 3. Now, I will be doing more specific build videos later on, but these are just some various tools to determine how you're going to build. It's important to incorporate high ends. It's important to use mods, gear mods with armor, as well as roll armor on these 4 gear pieces: the holster, the knee pads, the chest piece, and the backpack, as well as look for these new sets of gun talents, which are responsive, unforgiving, competent, vicious, deadly, brutal, and fierce. Those are my 6 that I would recommend everybody go for. I'm also going to recommend that in terms of gun types, people look at the lightweight M4 and the police M4 and the LVOAC for assault rifles, very high RPM, very good guns. That you look at the M44 of any kind for sniper rifles, very high base damage, very competitive in that regard. That you look for things like the military M870 or the SASG if you're going for shotguns, those are quite strong as well. And that you look for something like the L86 or the M60 for light machine guns. Those are amazing in addition to that. And then finally, for SMGs, you're going to want to go for the converted SMG9 or the MP5, in my opinion. Again, those are very strong because of the high RPM and the very high magazine size. So while SMGs, I believe, kind of lag a little bit behind the other gun types, especially things like the police and lightweight M4, they are still competitive if you use those 2 gun types. Now, that's going to about do it. I think hopefully there's some good information for people there. There will be an advanced section of this coming soon where I talk about more exact synergistic pairings between things and how to theory craft with percentage bonuses versus flat bonuses. But hopefully this gives you a start on how to kind of max out. I usually shoot for over 200,000 primary DPS, over 300,000 toughness, and over 100,000 skill power. Ideally, I would have about 250 on the primary DPS meter, 350 on the toughness meter, and 120,000 on the skill power meter. But that's going to really require completely maxed out rolls in every category, and I haven't achieved that yet. That being said, these are competitive stats, and anybody looking to replicate this type of build or the style of gameplay that you see in our live streams, those are some kind of loose indicators of whether or not you'll be able to do that. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you like the content, please check out the links below and stay tuned for more 1.4 content. We'll be trying to put together comprehensive build guides and comprehensive theory crafting guides for everyone out there to give you a leg up as you go through the division and, carve your own path as an agent. So thanks again for watching. And as always, guys, have a nice day.